everyone, it's Elizabeth again. I'm a big fan of FCS, and today I'm giving you a behind the scenes look at the FCS open house. This is their fall open house. Again, right now we're going on a tour through historic South Atlanta, which is a specific neighborhood below I-20 where FCS has been planted. So many cars. Where FCS has been planted for 18 years. So people from all across the country have come to the open house to learn from the Lepton Center, to learn from FCS, to see what holistic community development looks like and get ideas of what it could look like in their neighborhoods back home. So we're mostly going to be tracking with this open house tour on Instagram. So if you don't follow FCS on Instagram yet, take a moment, go to Instagram and go at FCS Ministries, and you'll be able to find us. And that's where we'll be posting clips from the tour today on our stories. It'll go for another hour or so, and it'll live there for a day and probably live on as a highlight. So if there's anything you want to know, just be sure to comment, tag someone who you think would be interested, and just stay tuned. Donnell's sharing about how FCS incorporates neighborhood feedback right now. Let me just show you. If you haven't been to FCS, where we're at. Okay. So FCS kind of exists at the intersection of Jonesboro and McDonough Boulevard. And if you've read any of Jeff Delp's pieces about wanting to make it more pedestrian friendly, you can see already here, like, one of the things FCS is really passionate about is making a place for neighbors to enjoy their neighborhood. And one of the things that goes into that is making the neighborhood really walkable. So right now you can see that this is a pretty bustling intersection. People are kind of barreling down. There's a sidewalk on this side, but there's not really a sidewalk. There's a small sidewalk on this side. So I know one of the things that Jeff's really passionate about is thinking about how to make it more pedestrian friendly and to encourage people who live in the neighborhood to come on foot to enjoy community grounds, to enjoy this future restaurant. So let me pause and talk about the restaurant for a second. I'll say so you can get a better view. So in case you didn't know, last year FCS created 12 jobs to employ local neighbors, and they revitalized 16 blighted properties and turned them into homes. So they're already doing a lot. What's another project for them? They've decided that the time in historic South Atlanta without a sit-down restaurant is over. So what they've done is they've purchased this building, Jay's. It used to be a gas station owned by the Johnson family, but now FCS has purchased it. They're renovating it, and what they're going to do next is they're going to have a restaurateur come lease the building and create a restaurant where people can eat at. It'll be the first sit-down restaurant in historic South Atlanta for decades. So that's really exciting. Some of you joined in on February to watch the groundbreaking. The groundbreaking's all done. The gas tanks are out. Right now, they're still working on permitting, but it's a really exciting development. Okay, I don't want to miss the tour. So let's keep going. So again, we're tracking with Donnell's tour now, and he's just going to take us through historic South Atlanta, and there's a number of stops along the way where he'll explain how FCS has worked. Ooh, pardon the sun, guys. So again, we're just walking, and Donnell is describing how FCS goes through its holistic community development work. So FCS has 4 pillars. One is mixed income housing, which you'll hear about later. The second is economic development. The third is neighborhood engagement. And the fourth is training and consulting, which is what the open house is all about. So again, this is the open house where people come from all over the country to learn about FCS, its model, and figure out what holistic community development can look like in their neighborhood. Ooh, let me step out of the sun there. So like I said, right now Donnell is talking about how they engage neighbors. One of the key factors he laid out is that FCS is part of the South Atlanta Civic League. So that is obviously where residents of historic South Atlanta gather. They throw on events like Treat Street, which is coming up in a month, where kids come out in costumes and they play. So they throw neighborhood events, and it's just a really great way for FCS to stay close to what's happening in the neighborhood, what neighbors are really caring about. So that's one of the ways that neighborhood engagement is kind of woven throughout everything FCS does. Again, pardon the trucks. And we're gonna keep going. All right, come on with me. All right, so the one interesting thing about the open house is you wanna make sure not to give a fishbowl experience, because no one likes feeling like their neighborhood's on display. So I'm gonna turn it down. I'm not gonna show you the houses because, good morning, how you doing? Again, because people live here and we want to be respectful. So the open house is actually a really closely curated experience that's built on trust. So Donnell, Monica, everyone who puts together the open house is really careful to make sure it's done in the most respectful way to neighbors. So here you go. We'll take a peek and listen on what Donnell's saying.
Also, longevity, long obedience in the same direction of earning the trust of neighborhood. So it hasn't been one that we would love to have acquisition of the home and have a portfolio and develop it. But the family's still holding on to it. And now another owner. And so at the same time, point being, the work of doing mixed income housing doesn't always mean that what you just walked past, homes that we've done consecutively and created diversity within our within mixed income strategy, is going to happen at every house, right? Some of it may take longer to get everything. So we are okay with that being the case versus buying a whole entire block and fixing that block, and then you drive out on the next block and it's a whole entire block of blighted and dilapidated. Our strategy is to go through neighborhood, create mixed income housing by way of doing that every so many houses, but also adding diversity in what that means. Let's keep walking this way.
Great. So I don't know if you caught that, but Donnell's talking about the fact that FCS is here for the long haul, so that means they don't always buy entire blocks, fix up just one block, because then you end up with one block that looks strangely different, and that can create a little bit of division in the neighborhood. So instead, what they do is they pick a couple houses along different streets, revitalize them, and then they become affordable homes. Sometimes that's an affordable rental, sometimes that's a market rate home, and that's part of the strategy of creating a mixed income neighborhood. Okay.
So one of the ways in which Atlanta has told their story. And now that you've been saying what they've done that with art, we just walked outside of the house there, they had it on it. But they use muralists to do art on fences, art on the side of houses. So you'll see that all throughout the neighborhood as well. Keep walking. So this home here was dean of schools. So the school that we're walking up to, which is the high school. I mentioned yesterday that the land was bought by African American in the 1800s in partnership with the Methodist Church. So majority culture, minority in the Christian church. The Methodist Church creates the Freedmen's Society. Everyone familiar with the Freedmen's Society? So it was Methodist leaders and pastors who wanted to see African Americans thrive. Let's step over for a second.
Got a little bit of Frank Lloyd Wright going on?
A little bit. Wanted to see African Americans thrive and flourish. And so because of law in Georgia today, right, many weren't able to buy land. So this partnership with pastors and leaders in the Methodist Church allowed for this type of land transition acquisition to happen, right? So this bishop buys 450 acres of land that become first Clark Atlanta University, and then just a few years later, into the 1860s, Gannon Theological Seminary. So undergrad for African Americans in the 1800s, and then seminary for African Americans. And you turn around and look in front of you, the brick with the white on the top. That is the chapel, the original built 1800s chapel for Clark Atlanta University. So that, what you see there is all of campus, and then you're coming down with the kind of one of the main streets of University Roads, right? And you got your Dean home, right, built. And so the streets of our neighborhood named after professors and leaders. So professors at the school were African American. So this blows my mind for a couple of reasons. Namely, that there's not an American history story that tells that you've got a neighborhood, a city, that's producing wealth amongst African Americans that could do acquisition of land that way, but then also that could build a college or university and then staff it with doctoral level educated folks, right? We hadn't even hit Emancipation Proclamation yet, right? And so that just wows me, that Atlanta story. You were kind of alluding to it, Miss Marilyn, for yourself growing up, but beyond that, beyond the Dr. King and the civil rights movement, if there was this story in the fabric of who Atlanta was that was bridging gap and divide, but even more, it was a story that the church was leading in. White church and black church were leading in that in a partnership together. And so that informs and shapes when we talk about narrative and why sense of place matters and why it's worth telling that story. There's a larger story that was happening in the narrative of America, right, that we would probably want to stay away from, but it's helpful to know that because it also shapes this kind of story too, right? Across the street from us is Bob's son and daughter-in-law. They still live in the neighborhood. They built this house and are still. So legacy for him goes on, right? It's still in the neighborhood. Let's walk our...
So there you have it, folks. Donnell giving the history of Gammon Theological Seminary, which is utterly bound up in the history of historic South Atlanta. One of the first black seminaries, black professors, land acquisitions, a story of the church coming together, really exciting. We are live from the FCS open house. Comment below, find us on Instagram where all of this is going to continue. It's at FCS Ministries. Leave any comments if you have questions. Visit our website if you've never heard about FCS before. And with that, thank you for tuning in. You'll have to come to another open house if you want to hear the whole story.